And right now, Vancouver Whitecaps head coach Marc Dos Santos is joining us, as the Whitecaps have been in Toronto the last few days after arriving in town late Monday to prepare for that game Tuesday. And it's quite a road trip for them at this moment in time, as they will continue with the road games after they play in BMO Field on Friday night. They'll go to Montreal. So 3 road games in 8 days as this little stretch continues where it's all Canadian teams playing against each other. Marc, great to see you. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us here on Footy Talks. We were just chatting about Alphonso Davies and what he's been able to accomplish this week. As somebody who's been involved in the game in this country for such a long time, and obviously is so well-versed in the Canadian game, growing up, looking at some of the achievements that players have had, Canadian players around the world, what does it mean to you and to this country to see potentially on Sunday for the first time in the Men's Champions League, a Canadian men's international taking that pitch?
It's huge. It's a huge step forward. I think what we lack in our country is that our young players have references and guys to look up to. And now we have, not only with Alphonso Davies, that has been at the top, probably right now one of the best in his position in the world. And you also have a kid like Jonathan David, also transferred to Lille. And I know how much Lille does their homework to bring players in. It starts to give references to our young players. And that's what we have in Canada for hockey. And we slowly are starting to get that with soccer. So if Bayern Munich is able to win the Champions League, and pictures out there of a Canadian kid that grew up in one of the MLS clubs and lifting a trophy like that, it's going to create an impact in the younger players moving forward. It's huge.
And you'll have your fingers crossed for that because of what it does for Canadian soccer. But also, reports in Bild, the German newspaper, Mark, that the Whitecaps get €1 million if Alphonso Davies wins the Champions League. Is that true?
Then if I answer, people are going to say, where's that money going? So I'm here to coach the team and not to talk about money.
Mark, let me follow up, though, about the development of Canadian young players. Obviously, Alphonso Davies, as you said, is a wonderful player to look up to. But is it not important also that those young players see the process of how hard he worked to get there? That it's not just simply a player that graduated from Major League Soccer to go and then start performing to Bayern Munich. I think it's important that we all continue to discuss just how hard work it is and the dedication to the craft that Alphonso and Jonathan are showing to elevate themselves to that level in Europe that other Canadians would have to do if they want to follow that path.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's the testimony of people that worked with him. Me, I don't want to be a guy that jumps on the Davies wagon because I didn't work with Fonzie. So I think a lot of people that worked with him have to come out and really talk about how much and what he did. Talks with our performance team, with John Poley here, that talks a lot about the type of guy he was before training and after training. And these people have to share with our young players. They have to share in the academies. They have to share also the sacrifice you said about, you mentioned also Jonathan David, the sacrifice of him packing and going to Belgium when some people were not taking him in the pro clubs around here. And now he's a special player. So that sacrifice of being able to take a risk to almost overtrain to become better, that's the only way we're going to move forward. And there's a little bit too much. What lacks, I think, in our young players is there's a huge comfort zone. There's a lack of opportunity also for our young players. And there's also a lack of references. Now, it's up to the clubs to provide opportunities, and it's up to players like Fonzie or Jonathan to create an impact in such a way that now our young players have references and guys to look up to.
Mark, what do you think we've improved in the development system? I know you've came up with some great points there, but I look at your academy and the success you're having, Alfonso coming through that, thinking of Pichile and Facineri who did so well at the U17 World Cup, TFC of a Jayden Nelson. So, every club's starting to get these little gems starting to show and some kind of progression. Is it the mental side? Have we learned that? Is it the pathway? Or is it just an accumulation of everything, the reference points that you mentioned that are meaning that the success is going to come, and how successful can we be? Can we start to create more and more Davids and Davies for the system, for the Canadian teams, and obviously for the national team?
Steve, I could talk about this for hours, because I think there's too many specialists that say, no, it's easy. You develop better coaches that coach the young players, and so many people have ideas and programs. But at the core, I think when we look at things at the core, we have to look at what happens in other countries. What happens in other countries that are successful with young players is that they have tons of references for them. They play the game thinking about, today I'm going to be Maldini. Today I'm going to be Pirlo, Ronaldo, Messi. They play with references. We don't have enough of that in Canada. I met in my career, and you probably had that when you played in MLS, guys playing in pro clubs that don't like the game. They don't want to watch Champions League. They want to watch the Seahawks against the 49ers. It's a reality in MLS. It happens in MLS. So there's a lack of, and we have to say the truth, references help. That's why Fonzie and that's why David are going to help our young players. What I think we need is what MLS has brought, and even the CPL. You're talking about Facineri that played in the U17 World Cup, great experience. Us loaning him to Ottawa, having the CPL where he played his first game on loan to Ottawa yesterday, having minutes to grow. When you look at the opportunity of Max Crepeau that he had in Ottawa before he came to Vancouver, if Max would have stayed as a number 3 or number 2 in Montreal, maybe he would have never had that opportunity, and look at the talent we would have lost. So I think for Canada to become better, we need those references that are now happening. We need opportunity for our young players, and we also need the clubs that give those opportunities, and we need more of that. I think that's the path towards having a more successful pool of players.
What you were just saying there, Mark, reminds me of a story of, it was back in 2008 when John Carver came across from England to take charge of Toronto FC. You know him well from Newcastle, Stevie, and he was incredulous when he walked into the locker room after training one day and found the players watching NBA on the televisions in there. And he left them in no uncertain terms about, if you're in here and you're working, if something's on the television, it's soccer, because you've got to immerse yourself in the culture. And that was one of the things he found that was the hardest to deal with as he was coming into the country back then in 2008. The fact that it's not that 24/7 just desire, the hunger for soccer. That's something I miss here as opposed to what you grow up with in England. But just bringing it back to you and where you are now, Mark, with the Whitecaps, that game on Tuesday night, you've got another one coming up on Friday. How's the response been from your players after the performance Tuesday and the defeat at BMO Field?
Yeah, the response, you can only give it on Friday, because the response today and yesterday was heavy, because everything about the game was wrong for us. Everything was bad. I can't find one apart from we defended well overall on set play situation, that I take that piece as a positive. But you have to be very frontal when games like that happen, and analyze things when games like that happen, and be extremely direct and not hide. We cannot hide. Everything was wrong. Every time we had the ball, we gave it away, but in a cheap way, in a very, very cheap way. Our lines were very far from each other defending. I felt that our last game, having pretty much all of the options, was in the beginning, the first week of March. And then we pressed pause there 5 months and a half ago. And then we had 5 months and a half of total disruptive environment, not between the relationships in the club, but just some of the group going into Orlando, another one staying, quarantine, training home, not being able to go to the training facility. We only had 5 training sessions altogether. It's been 5 months and a half of disruptive environment. And then where I was totally wrong as a coach is I thought that I just press play again from March and we continue our process. And there I was wrong, because I had to come back to baby steps of doing things right first when we don't have the ball, then slowly growing in our pressure and what we do when we have the ball. And all that is not on the players. It's only on me.
Marc, I got a couple of questions for you. I'll ask you the second one in a minute, more about the coach, but I want to ask the first one about you, the man. Obviously, this is now the second season for you as the main man at the Whitecaps. How has this process been for you? Having covered the game for over a couple of decades, I know talking to coaches, it can be extremely consuming. How has it been handling it with your own personal life? Have you changed at all? How's everything going with you in terms of you continue to stick to your own principles?
I came from a lot of winning. That was my first 10 years was a lot of environments of winning and winning. And even as an assistant coach was a lot of winning. And now the last year and a half, there's a lot of losing. But I stay, as a man, I stay very grounded to the reality of the ups and downs of the job. You know, I get motivated by coaches like, I'll give you an example. Mauricio Sarri, before having his first big job, he got so many relegations and 8 times fired. Or Jorge Jesus, he was 56 years old before he coached his first big team. And all coaches that had success, you have to accept that you'll get in your career moments that are lows. But what I want to live as a person is, how are you in the low moments? And I never want to project towards you guys, media, or people that comment that I'm a guy that breaks, that finds excuses, that talks about, oh, I would love to have a player like this or like that. No, I'm here to find solutions with the group I have and give everything I have every day. That's the only thing I can control. And I love that. I love that adrenaline. Look, I share, everybody knows about that. I'm a big Formula One fan. And I think if I wasn't a soccer coach, I would have been a Formula One driver. I like to be in an intense moment, hard curves, everything all in, fast. And I'd love to live my life like that. So when things are more difficult, you can break. You need to be in front of the group, find solutions, giving your best. That's what you could control as a coach.
Appreciate the honesty. And as a coach, when you first joined the Whitecaps, you said the first thing that you wanted to do was to bring a model of play, the behaviors, the principles. Do you have that model of play now, and if not, why not?
Yeah, we had. No, this is a great question. I felt that after everything we did in San Diego and in Portland and the beginning of the season, I felt this is exactly where I want this club to go. I felt we were going in the direction. I knew what we would do in the transfer market, talking with Axel, what's our next pieces. And then when everything stopped and the break and going to Orlando the way we did, we totally lost that identity. And right now, we're in search of our identity again. It's the truth. To say that we're a team that has an identity, knows what to do. No, right now we're in search of it again. And I hope and I believe that on Friday, we have to be very humble in our approach. We have to be very pragmatic in our way we approach the game, because the quality and the talent in Toronto is higher than us right now. And you guys have been in the game. To say, if me being here and say, no, we have more quality, more talent, I'm lying to you guys. They have more quality, they have more talent. So how can we, with our weapons, counter that, do well when we don't have the ball, stay very close to each other, and from there giving ourselves to win. We're playing a team that hasn't lost a regular season game in their last 16 matches. So it tells you a little bit of the quality they have. They went to 3 finals in the last 4 years. So our approach needs to be smart. And when I talk about baby steps, it's first, we can concede the amount of opportunities we concede. We have to do much better defensively, and then slowly grow from that.
So how difficult is that, Mark? You know, you're a coach with a clear identity. You know how you want to play. You get to a club, you realise you maybe don't have the pieces. You have to try and get results. It's every head coach's job to try and get wins. And I guess what I'm asking is, like, where's the line between trying to win games and keeping your values and your sort of, I guess, tactics as a coach? You know, how difficult has that been? Is it frustrating for you? And how do you manage that?
The most frustrating thing for a coach is to have to play in a way that he believes could bring results better, but goes a little bit against his values as a coach. And it's very clear what I want, how I would like to play, and how I see the game played. And I've shared a lot of times that the teams that were closer to that and how I see the game is teams like Liverpool or Flamengo or River Plate of last season. If you followed them in the Libertadores, these are the teams that I myself identify more with. But then there's, like you said, there's where you're at today with the group that you have today. What we have to do is by steps. And the most frustrating part for us was I felt we were going in that direction after we left San Diego and the tournament in Portland. First 2 games of the season, last result against the Galaxy, and how we played in LA also. And then it fell apart. It fell apart for a lot of different reasons. And then you have to kind of take the pieces off the ground and slowly rebuild it again. That's just where we are.
Marc, so much more we could talk about, but we're out of time. We hopefully get you on again sometime in the future. Thanks so much for your time today. Good luck with your preparations for tomorrow night. We'll see you at BMO Field.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck, guys.
Take care.
Marc Dos Santos, head coach of the Whitecaps, joining us on Footy Talks.